Hey everybody, super excited. The fact that we actually have our own backdrop, FW22, been wanting something for like this for 8, 9, 10 years, and the fact that today is our first episode and it's a reality is very humbling, but we have lots of work to do, and what better way to do it than kick it off with the co-founder Tyler Egbert, and then a huge Bareknuckle recovery grassroots guys, huge fans of theirs. One of them is actually one of our board members now, which is phenomenal. But for episode 1, I didn't want it to be about Tyler and I wanted it to be about somebody I'm a huge fan of in the community. So I'm very, very happy that we have Nate and Tommy both on studio today to kick off our first ever episode. So welcome.
Yeah, we're happy to be here.
Very happy to be here.
Appreciate it, guys. So Jared knows you guys a lot better than I do. Nate, I kind of know you a little bit from back in the day, but Tommy, I really don't know you that much. So do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're from, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. We could just have Nate tell his story, and then they're basically the same. There's
Okay.
like two
Very
things
similar,
that are different,
yeah.
but no. So yeah, my name's Tommy Streeter. I just turned 31 a few days ago.
Happy birthday.
And
Happy birthday.
I'm in long-term recovery from heroin addiction. Primarily heroin. I would use anything that was around, but heroin was what really brought me to my knees and wound me up in jail and treatment over and over again. I'm from Warsaw. I was born and raised in Warsaw. Lived there most of my life, other than about 2.5 years after I got sober. I got sober at a treatment center down in Indy. Lived down there for about 2.5 years. Started working in the treatment field when I was about 7 or 8 months sober, which is when I met Nate. We were both in a class to become certified recovery coaches. So I met Nate in that class, went back to Indy, and we just kind of stayed in touch. He was already working at Fort Wayne Recovery at the time. I started working at the last treatment center that I went to. Ended up there for about a year, moved on to another treatment center. That one didn't work out, and I reached out to Nate one day, and I was just like, hey, how would you guys feel about having, an outreach person down in Indy? So I came up and sat down with him and a few of the owners at Fort Wayne Recovery. We just had a conversation. They ended up hiring me, and then a few months after that, I moved back up to Warsaw, which is where I still live now, and that was back in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been back up here ever since then.
Okay. Do you play sports when you were younger or anything?
I always played basketball and football. I played football in high school. I was the quarterback of the football team until I couldn't pass a drug test to save my life. They let me get away with failing 3, but after that third one, I got kicked off the team.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
What do you do now, like hobbies-wise?
Go to the gym and work and hang out with my wife. That's about it.
Right on.
I never would have guessed the gym.
I was going to say, I don't.
I'd get this guy a sandwich.
I only do cardio. So
Okay.
Right. He's a big runner.
He loves
Marathon.
calisthenics. So
Yeah.
I'm very flexible.
A lot of Pilates.
A lot of yoga, Pilates.
I love it.
Stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. All right. Nate, what about you?
I mean, I'm from Fort Wayne. I started struggling with substance use about when I was in middle school. For me, like, I feel like my story is similar to a lot of people that struggle in the sense that I always felt different than everybody around me. And I know, Tommy, your story is very similar to that too. We felt like we never quite fit in. I always felt like I was dropped off on this planet by aliens, and everybody else was an earthling, and they all knew how to interact with each other, and I couldn't figure it the hell out. So I looked for ways to escape reality. Even as a young person, like I remember as a kid, I was somebody that would play hours and hours in video games if I could, or, dive into eating a whole bag of Skittles, whatever it was.
One bag of Skittles, huh?
Wow.
That was it?
It was a big bag of Skittles.
big bag.
It was like the industrial sized bag. And of course then, as a kid, I did have a bit of eating problems. So I became kind of like chubby, and of course then that just leads to further insecurity as a child.
Feeling even worse.
Yeah. So, I started to act out, and I was like, I'm just going to be the class clown because, if I fail on purpose, then it's not because I didn't try, it's because I don't care about succeeding, and I always felt so much pressure, not really that people put on me on purpose, but, it was an internal pressure that I thought came from outside. My family, a lot of them were successful at different things. People knew them well, and they were looked at as, good people in the community, and everybody would say, oh, Nate, you must be such a nice boy. And I didn't know what the hell that meant. So I just acted out because I didn't like these labels that were put on me as a kid. So I was like, I'm just going to be the bad guy, and I'm just going to pretend I don't care about my grades. I'm going to get bad grades on purpose and make a joke out of it. So then I started getting in trouble at school. Grades were terrible. And, my parents were like, man, there's something wrong with our kid. What's wrong with him? We don't know. And back then, and even today, child psychiatrists are all the rage. So they took me to one and they were like, hey, this poor kid has attention deficit disorder. And then at one point they added the hyperactive disorder to it so they could begin to medicate. In the United States now, 1 in 20 children are actually on a psychotropic medication, which is actually pretty frightening. Children as young as 2 are being medicated. And at the time I was about, 11 or 12 years old. And, the drug that they put me on was Adderall, which is an amphetamine.
I hate Adderall.
Yeah.
I used to sell it to everybody at school because it made me feel terrible.
Yeah.
So everybody at Concordia was rich and we weren't. So I'm like, I'm gonna get their money and sell them Adderall. And I got to eat real lunch, not the pink ticket lunches.
Exactly. Right. Well, as a kid, like your brain doesn't finish developing as a male till you're 25, like I think a lot of people are wondering if mine will ever finish developing probably. But, I had an undeveloped brain and I was insecure. So like when they put me on Adderall, we talk a lot about dopamine and, when we try to explain addiction to people, and it's a neurochemical, it's the chemical that makes you feel happy, makes you feel good. It's a reward center in our brain. Which is a good thing. It actually kept us alive when we were, cavemen back in the day. You had to go and get food and you had really to work at it and it would create dopamine, right? It kept us alive. It's actually the wanting chemical. So we use dopamine actually to measure every substance or action for addictive potential. So for instance, food has a dopamine rating of 50, sex has a dopamine rating of 100, and amphetamines has a dopamine rating of 1,000. So as a child, my brain's undeveloped. My dopamine receptors are undeveloped. I don't have ADHD. So for some people that do have ADHD, it's a very effective medication. But when you don't, it produces a high, right? Because if it does work for you, then you have certain deficiencies in the brain. However, they just had me sit on this stupid computer for like 2 hours and click on boxes, and they were like, oh, this poor kid's got mental problems. Let's slap him on medication, instead of actually observing me for an extended period of time. And like I've highlighted, overprescribing medication for young people and adults in America. 1 in 4 adults in America is actually on a psychotropic medication. That's the first thing we throw at people is medications. And of course, that message to young people then tells them what? Substances are the answers to my problems. So when I started taking that Adderall, I suddenly didn't care what anybody thought about me. And of course I started losing weight too, right? So, at that time I was starting to get into working out with my dad, I was losing weight, started to feel good about myself. When I took the pills, I didn't care what anybody thought. So even before I knew what addiction was, obviously we had the DARE program, but this was contrary to what the DARE program had told us, which is if you take drugs, you're going to die. And they're like, oh, here, but take this drug. This is okay.
Because it was prescribed. So you're like, okay, it's got to be, decent because a doctor prescribed it to me. I got
Absolutely.
You. Okay.
And I think a lot of people think that about drugs that are prescribed. And for some people, it can be highly effective. But, my thought process instantly as somebody that struggles with substance use, I'm an addict. I identify that through and through, is if one's good, three's 3 times better. So I started saving them up and taking 3 at a time and being 3 times higher. So, what that ended up doing for me was opening up the door to experimentation. So, okay, if Adderall is going to make me feel good, why not try this joint that the older kids are smoking, And of course, the first thing I started doing was like sneaking cigarettes with kids like at recess. They'd steal cigarettes from their parents and we'd smoke them and get a nicotine buzz and like half throw up, but, push through it the first time you chew.
Yeah.
Yeah, chewing's disgusting.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's funny when you said DARE. Mm-hmm. I remember they used to show us pictures of like what happens to your jaw when you chew.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that's disgusting. Mm-hmm. And then here I am today. I'm like, let's go, bring it. But growing up, DARE was all we had. As long as it was prescribed, you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's insane to me.
Yeah, so we just opened up a lot of people to substance use, like things that they may have not been exposed to otherwise. And that's all addiction is self-medicating. There's something in us that makes us feel less than, and that's a quick fix, right? So people are trying to medicate themselves when they're using substances because it provides them something that they feel is missing. When I first tried opioids for the first time, I played high school football, and I ended up having 3 shoulder surgeries in high school. And back then, Purdue Pharma had that whole campaign, we're going to cure the world's pain. Pain is the 5th vital sign. We actually know that pain is actually very effective and it's very important. People who can't feel pain die like 5 times earlier than people who do feel pain. Pain tells us when something's wrong. It's very important. It's a good thing. So I got prescribed medication, Percocet, at 15. Well, the first time I took it, I always tell people I had like a semi-spiritual experience. And I'm sure Tommy would say the same thing about the first time he tried an opiate.
Yep. I was 16, hurt my back playing football. Doctor gave me prescription of Darvocet, and same exact thing.
And so in that moment, you know, your thought process is like, this is how I should feel every single day for the rest of my life. This is how everybody else feels. Like I said, I felt like distant from my fellow man in the sense that I felt like I was from another planet, and that like interacting with fellow human beings was clunky and awkward for me. But when I took those drugs, man, did it feel seamless.
Can we talk about something real quick?
Yeah.
So you guys said something that really resonated with me. So both of you guys, I mean, you said you'd identified that you'd had experiences with substances before, but really it kind of sounds like for both you guys, there was like a sports related injury. And then following that sports related injury, you guys were prescribed a painkiller. And then would you guys both say that kind of started you down a path? Okay. Because
we were both, no, you're good. We were both definitely on that path already.
Okay.
And sooner or later, we would have wound up just where we wound up. But that, at least for me, made it start way early, potentially way earlier than it would have.
Gotcha.
When I got that bottle of pills, like I had taken, you know, one or two here and there before that. I was smoking a lot of weed. I was drinking, you know, doing mushrooms, at like anything that was around me. But there wasn't a whole lot of opiates that I had experience with. But when I got that bottle of them, that was my bottle, and every pill in that bottle was mine, that's really when it took a turn.
Okay.
Yeah, and the overprescribing of it for, you know, and I knew kids in high school, I'm sure you guys did too, who rolled their freaking ankle playing soccer, and they got a bunch of Vicodin, you know, or they sprained their knee. It created the perfect environment for people to become heavily addicted to opioid medication. Access is a big part of why it took off the way it did for both of us and for a lot of people. Like Tommy said, not that we wouldn't have transformed into maybe full-blown alcoholics or something like that, but the environment for it was perfect for what happened.
Gotcha. There's actually, correct me if I'm wrong though, but the maker, the pharmaceutical company that made Vicodin, there's actually like a class action lawsuit because they were pushing that so much, correct?
They're all getting sued. I mean,
okay.
The big one now is Purdue that Nate had mentioned for OxyContin.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
And wasn't there a clinic here in Fort Wayne? They got busted and they was just pushing
more
out.
than one, but the one you're talking about,
Cozy and Hendricks were the two doctors who were taken down in a sting operation by the DEA, FBI, and local Fort Wayne Police Department.
It's insane.
Just for overprescribing, essentially?
They estimate that practice alone created over 10,000 opiate addicts in Allen County. There's 370,000 people in
That's a lot
Allen
of
County.
money, too.
They were making $1 million a month cash.
Oh, wow.
They only took cash. They didn't do insurance, which was a red flag right there.
Yeah.
And there was obviously not obviously, but it came out later that there was a lot of other types of unsavory favors being done.
Okay.
And they knew that things were being diverted. They were not victims in this whole scenario.
It blows my mind. I do want to touch on something too, without cutting your story short.
No,
but
please do.
So since I've been just investing so much emotionally and spiritually into you two, you know, obviously I've known you for a long time, but just your stories and what you do. The one thing I don't get angry when you say it. It's just because I haven't accepted it, but you always say I'm an addict. And I'm like, no, you're not. You guys are lifesavers. And so, you know, I don't, you know, luckily I'm blessed. I never went down those holes except for alcohol, which runs so deep with my family. And there was a time for FW22 where I didn't drink for like 3 years just because I was telling vets don't drink. And I don't think I struggled not drinking. I think I was more annoyed of people that were giving me crap for not drinking.
Sure.
And it's like, I don't know why this is a norm. But like I go through these periods where I'll drink a bottle of whiskey like every 3 days. And then I just go and get another one. And then, I get a pretty good buzz. I think I have a really high tolerance. Maybe it's functioning. Doesn't stop me from getting up in the morning. It doesn't, but it's like my escape. I like to come home, watch sports, and I pour my bourbon glasses pretty thick when everyone else is like they'd be, but I'm just like, dude, I'm not an alcoholic. But then I do know that if I don't have that, when I come home at night, I'm like I just want to go to bed. This is boring. So whenever you guys are like, I'm an addict, I'm like, well, I'm not an addict, but I am, right? Because it's mentally, it's something that my body wants, and I still do it. Even if I'm like, okay, after this bottle, I'm not going to get nothing for a few days. I'll mean it, but on my way home, I'm going to go get that bottle. Yeah. So you guys have really helped shape how I think of things, which I don't know if that's good or bad, but I guess I'm more acceptance that, hey, maybe you do got a problem. So maybe one day I will kick it. But right now, it's one of the things that it does keep me sane because the thoughts I have in my head, from just experiences in the military or the experiences that I have to deal with doing FW22 with other vets. When I hear their trauma, I'm like, oh man, that's a lot. And it does take a toll on you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very impressed that you two, who are addicts, and have been clean and sober for a long time now, deal with those same type of people, but you haven't used that as a resource to help relax you at the end of a long day. Like it's very impressive. It shows your character, because my vice is I love a glass of bourbon to help me deal with all these sad stories that I deal with vets.
Yeah, of course.
And you guys could be the same way. Like, I'm just going to go pop a pill. It's been a long, you don't do that. So I'm very proud of you. Like you guys are definitely an inspiration to me. So it's really important that you guys do that and that you guys stay strong. But when you say like, I'm an addict, I'm always like, no, they're not. But I mean, that's what we are. We're in recovery. So I'm very proud of you, both of you.
I always like to tell people that, addiction is typically defined as continued use despite negative consequences. That's how we measure it. And also we measure it in broken relationships. So if someone's watching and they're like, am I an addict or alcoholic? Do you continue to use despite negative consequences, right? So is your health failing? Have you been piling up DUIs, right? Like, have you been getting in fistfights at the bars when you drink? Broken relationships. Is your family or the people around you pulling back from you because of who you are when you drink? That is when I think I encourage people to take a strong look inward to say, am I an addict? Am I an alcoholic? And the only reason that Tommy and I continue to identify as that is because we feel it's very important, not for, some of it is for the benefit of others to see that, it's okay to admit it and you can actually recover, but also selfishly for our own benefit. We don't want to forget who we are and where we came from, because a lot of people make the mistake of getting sober for a period of time, right? When they have a severe problem, and I mean severe, like Tommy and I, we were not functioning at all. Like we were homeless, living in our cars, living in Tent City in Indianapolis, burned everything to the ground. We're not welcome in our family's homes. None of our friends want anything to do with us. But people start to get a few things back and they think, you know what, maybe I can have a couple Vicodin today and I just see how it goes. Or maybe I'll just have like, a couple beers. And usually what happens for most people like us is you get away with it for a couple days or maybe a couple weeks. But before long, we've convinced ourselves that it's okay to drink a fifth in one day, or it's okay to go to the dope man's house and buy a gram of heroin, because we've earned it and it's okay. So we say that because we don't want to forget where we came from, because we don't want to go back to where we were. We want to keep moving forward. And we know that, and a lot of people would say, well, that's your choice if that's what you want to do. But one of the things that I realized when I got sober, and I didn't realize it till I got sober, was how I impacted the world around me when I was using. That it wasn't, because a lot of people say, well, my drinking and drugging doesn't hurt anybody but me. Well, I have two parents that are still alive. It hurt them. I have a younger sister. I have an older sister. I have both sets of grandparents. God, thank you. Grateful for that. Right. I have aunts, uncles. I had employers that I didn't show up for jobs. Right. Like I didn't pay my taxes. I stole things. So it's not only about me, but it's also about how I impact the world around me, because addiction is so selfish. Like I said, like I always wanted to feel better. I was focused on my feelings, not about how I impacted the world around me. So that's why Tommy and I are adamant. Like when people say, don't refer to yourself as an addict or alcoholic, because it's demeaning. It's not demeaning. To me, it's just me being honest about who I am and what, like there's still a monster inside of me that I need to keep at bay. That's the way I identify that way. Would you concur?
Well, yeah. And the example that you gave of, we get sober for a little bit, I'm 30 days sober and I think, all right, now I can handle, smoking a little bit of weed or drinking here or there. Like I did that over and over and over again and proved to myself that's not accurate. Nate did the same thing. Every time I did that, and that's how it always started. It would start with, I haven't used anything for a while. I've been smoking weed since I was 12 years old. I can smoke weed. It's not going to be that bad. It's not any different than smoking a cigarette. So I'd start smoking weed. And in less than a month, every single time, I'm doing heroin again. And even if I was able to just smoke weed and do nothing else, I'd spend all my money on it. I wouldn't go to work if I couldn't get high first. I wouldn't be able to eat if I couldn't get high first. I wouldn't do anything if I couldn't get high first. So like Nate said, it doesn't matter what the substance is or how much you're using. It took over my life, like immediately. The first time I would get high after being sober for a little bit, that was it. it was off to the races.
And I'll say one more thing about addiction. I've been listening to a podcast recently. The book that I read, Dopamine Nation, which was given to me by Remedy Live for the Get Schooled tour, but it's launched me into doing a lot of research. This woman's a psychiatrist, Dr. Ann Lemke. She's the lead chair of addiction medicine at Stanford University. And I really enjoy her work. And I was listening to her podcast called Driven. And it's actually a podcast run by a guy that's 35 years sober from smoking crack. He ended up in a psych ward at 19, right? And what they were talking about is that addiction also, like part of the reason I refer to myself as an addict is it's actually a superpower. And what I mean, people say, what the heck are you talking about? Well, what I mean by that is that drive, like I don't care if it was raining daggers. I'm going to find a way to get my dope. You best believe. I could be living in a box in Indy, and I was living on the street in Indy at one point. I found a way every day to get high. And that's not because like there's necessarily something wrong with me. I just need to figure out how to channel that properly. And today I've done that. I've helped channel that into a positive energy. So I'm not necessarily an addict's not a bad thing. It just means you're driven. You're trying to succeed, and you'll succeed by any means necessary. And I think, one of the things how that would be relevant to what we're doing here today is I feel like a lot of veterans are that way, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's drilled into you in the military. Absolutely. You achieve your objective no matter what, and then people come home and they're like, well, what the hell is my objective now?
Yeah. We were literally just talking about that because I'm dumb and we showed up 2.5 hours early, but
but you were on it, man.
We were just like, it's just insane. I deal with all kinds of vets, but the one thing that I think stands is they lose that entitlement. For whatever reason, they're so pumped, and a lot of vets will disagree with this, and that's fine. But like when you're in, like you're wanted, you're appreciated. When you come home, you're everyone's hero, right? You're that local hero that's off. But when you come home, it's like, well, go get a job like everybody else. And then some of them are confused because they're like, well, my friends went to college and they have a house and they have a wife. And it's like, I think I said it when I was on yours. I can down a bottle of Jameson and I can shoot from 800 yards with iron sights, which is great. How's that going to help me get a job here in Allen County? So, and that's, again, why I'm so in awe with what you guys do, because I've never really thought of addiction when it comes to the vets. I'm just thinking, they're just crazy. We're struggling. We got to get through this. But yeah, they get them in those rabbit holes, and then everybody around them alienates them, which is the worst thing I think you could do, because that's when they need you the most. But then the vets, they don't know how to ask for help. Like, you spent the last 4 years posting about me on Facebook on how I'm your hero, and now I'm struggling and I need you to help me. And they're not going to do that.
Right.
So I'm excited to see like what we can do as a team, because addiction is definitely hand in hand with mental health and veterans just as much as it is with civilians. So I'm really excited for where our future is. But yeah, it's just in this last 6 months since I've been stalking you two, I've learned so much, and the way I think is so different. And it's just, I'm pretty stubborn, so the way I think is the way I think. And for you two to change the way I think is just, it's phenomenal. I mean, yeah, I'm excited.
So I want to kind of transition here into learn about bare knuckle recovery a little bit more. So you guys already kind of talked about your background. I appreciate you sharing about your struggle. I don't want to breeze over that, because I realize that was a lot of learning for you guys, and it was a lot of hard years, and you had a lot of growth. But you guys got to where you were now to start bare knuckle recovery. Okay, so do you want to talk about what that is, how you guys built it, and what you're doing today?
Yeah.
It's kind of funny funny is not the right word. It's really interesting about why and how we originally started it and what it turned into. Mm-hmm. The reason we started it is not funny at all. In early 2021, it was shortly after I had, a year or so after I had moved back up here, but I had been working at Fort Wayne Recovery, so Nate and I pretty much worked together every day. But I guess, the end of 2020 into early 2021, we started getting a lot of people that were reaching out to us, and more often than not, it was, if family or mom, dad, whoever was reaching out to us and talking to us about about how they had recently lost a loved one. A lot of them, it was they had recently lost a child and to an overdose. And on the toxicology report, it said fentanyl overdose, fentanyl poisoning. They were coming to us and asking us, this is what this says. Like, what is this? What is fentanyl? I don't know what this is. So, we would explain to them, what is fentanyl? Why is it here? Where it's coming from? All that. And they would ask us, why isn't anybody talking about this? But the one conversation that really pushed us into making the first video that we ever did that eventually turned into bare knuckle recovery, we were meeting with a woman at Fort Wayne Recovery. Her name is Teresa, and she was telling us how she had recently lost her son to a fentanyl overdose. And I guess she's the one that really asked us, you know, she's like, why is nobody, this isn't on the news, because this was back before it was on the news.
Yeah.
Literally nobody was talking about it.
Yeah, very few.
And so that's what we told her. You know, this is, nobody really wants to have that conversation. And she was like, well, you guys should start talking about it. And we're like, well, I don't think anyone's going to listen to us, but okay, you know, we'll make a video talking about, you know, what is fentanyl? Where's it coming from? Why is it here? Blah, blah, blah. So we did that, just, you know, shot it on my iPhone in one of the offices at Fort Wayne Recovery. I think we just posted it on our personal Facebook pages. And that video really blew up. It got a whole bunch of interactions on Facebook. It got a bunch of shares. It led to a bunch of messages from different people in the community asking us more questions about fentanyl, asking us questions about other, you know, addiction and recovery related topics.
Yeah.
And so we just started answering these questions in new videos that we were making. And then we started working with the guy who does a lot of our digital marketing and, you know, runs our Fort Wayne Recovery Facebook page and website. And he was like, well, you guys should create your own page on Facebook. We can turn it into a YouTube channel. You know, we'll put all these videos that you guys are making on this page. We'll put it on the channel. He's like, we just need to come up with a name. So we sat in the office one day for, I don't know how long, trying to come up with a name. And Nate is the one that came up with the name Bareknuckle Recovery. I'll let him tell you why.
Well, I had made a post because, you know, we were talking about fentanyl and a lot of other things, but also we thought it was important to talk about recovery and addiction and just to educate people. There weren't a lot of resources out there locally educating people. And we had a lot of Facebook friends, so we started talking about it. And one of the videos we posted just was about addiction and how rough it can be, and then just about recovery. And we talked about how recovery was a bare-knuckle brawl with addiction because it's bloody, it's painful, it sucks. So that's really where that name came from. And I was just like, oh, how about bare-knuckle recovery, kind of like as a joke, because I was like, maybe it sounds corny, and everybody's like, no, I like that. That's good. You know?
I definitely thought it sounded corny at first, but
Yeah.
I think it's sweet.
it grew on me.
Yeah, but it's true. Like it's gritty. It's in the trenches. Like it's messy. You know, it's not a pleasant experience. You know, and you've ever punched him in the face with your bare knuckles. It's not always the, you know, like you let
Or
you
getting
win.
punched in the face.
Right, with
fun.
bare knuckles. You know, like it takes a lot of resolve, you know, to make it through that and to, you know, to do those things. So we thought the name fit. And, you know, I mean, we really just wanted to be a resource for the community, especially locally in Northeast Indiana. There was just not a lot of people. And there were organizations that were trying to talk about it. But we were just so connected with the local community because of our jobs anyway, was to be in the community, learning about what's available. So we wanted to share with people what's available. But also, like I said, share with people our experience.
So bare-knuckle recovery is kind of like FW22, except you guys work, though, for Allendale.
Yep.
We just have normal jobs, and we don't get to do our passion. Well, maybe he does, but and so basically that is like your full-time job is you're out there as bare-knuckle recovery, just speaking at events, going to events, booths, all that stuff.
We definitely do a lot of that stuff, and we've got quite a few more people on our team now, but really the main purpose of it now, like, you know, we have the videos, we do the podcast, obviously, but the real purpose, the whole point of it now, what it's become is just connecting people with resources. We've got that Facebook page, we've got our website. People reach out to us every single day. We get, I don't know how many messages we get on that page every day. We get inquiries. My phone number's on the website. It's on our Facebook page. I get calls, texts.
Oh, yeah, you're busy.
We get emails all the time of people reaching out to us, and they tell us what's going on. And we take, you know, what basically their situation and try to find resources that fit their needs for them. And it's really cool now. We've got, you know, 5 or 6 people on that team that help us answer those messages and help us get people connected. And so anywhere in Indiana, like we've got resources everywhere in Indiana that we can share with people, but we get, you know, calls and emails and messages from people all over the country now.
Mm-hmm.
So that does make it a little bit tougher, but regardless of where that person's at, we do what we can to try to find something for that person, whether it's a treatment center, AA, NA meetings, a counseling, you know, whatever they need, a MAT clinic, whatever they're looking for, we're just able to do our best to get them connected with those resources.
So let's say we, as an organization, came across a vet that's struggling with an addiction. What would our process be to get them in touch? I mean, obviously I could say, you know, this is Nate, this is Tommy's number, but like, what is that process like for that veteran that doesn't know? Because veterans are stubborn. I mean, when they go to the VA, for instance, and maybe they're having a mental breakdown, they call it Code Pink, and it's a very scary situation for a vet. because they literally like they talk to you all kind. They get you in this room, and then when you're in that room, they're like, put on these clothes, give me your phone.
Yeah.
Then they call your loved one. They're like, hey, this vet has to go to Marion.
Oh, man.
You can ride with us, but you can't see him for 3 days at least. Now that vet's ready to just snap.
Right.
So like I get it. I'd be luckily I've never been in that situation, but I would not be happy.
Yeah.
If we were to come across a vet that we do know is struggling with addiction.
Yeah.
And obviously I know 2 very buff guys that don't go to the gym that could help. How would that work for them?
I mean, I would just have them reach out to us on the page, and we would start to like basically. One of the first things we have to figure out is what resources they have, whether it's financial or whether it's like insurance, whether it's TRICARE, whether it's VA insurance, whether it's insurance to their employer, whether it's Medicaid, which is fine. We can generally find some kind of center that can work with any of their insurance typically. And that's really where we start, is to try to like resource map and plug them in. And hopefully, they accept one of the resources we can find. And then our goal is to try to get them there as soon as possible. Really, it's just trying to find what's available and then filtering out from there based on the criteria, like, okay, what's going on? Is it like, are you smoking weed every day? Are you shooting fentanyl? Like, do you need detox? Is it mental health? Is it substance use primary? What is it? And it's basically just like kind of walking through all those steps and trying to figure out with them, but also at the same time, trying to relate to them on a human level, and let them know that, there is help out there and we'll help you get help. We do have one individual on our team that I know of for sure that's a veteran, Andrew Norris. And so, we try to fit the person talking to them with the story, right? So someone they can try to identify with and have some common ground. Because typically that's when you gain trust from people, is when you have some kind of common ground.
Yeah, because that way, I used to do that too when we'd help vets. Sometimes they look at me like I'm something better than what I am because I am in a nonprofit, but I'm like, dude, I'm just like, I hate the world too, dude.
Yeah.
So like, I just want you to know, like, I'm not inferior to you. Like, we are the same. And they open up a lot more when they, instead of me with like a pen and paper, like drilling in with questions, it's like, dude, what's going on? Like, let's talk.
Yeah.
So that is good that you guys do that.
So just to clarify, you guys got a Facebook page or you have a website? Is that bareknucklerecovery.org?
.com.
Okay,
Yep.
.com. Okay,
and then,
cool.
the Facebook page is Bareknuckle Recovery. Those are the primary ways that people reach out to us. But we do also, the podcast that we do is on every podcast platform. So Apple, Spotify, Amazon, like all that stuff. The podcast is on all that if anyone wants to listen to it. The videos are all on YouTube. In order to get in touch with us, the easiest way to do it is through the Facebook page or just on our website. My phone number and my email's on our website.
Okay. And it's same thing, like if parents have questions where they have a kid that's going through some things or they're acting differently, they can get resources or they can contact you guys directly. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And I'll, if they call me, like my info is on the page. So if they reach out to me and they tell me exactly what's going on with them, if I think that Nate or Andrew or Sierra, Zach, Sam, whoever, somebody on our team might have, might be able to relate to that person's situation a little better, I'm going to ask them to reach out to them.
Mm-hmm.
If it's me, then I'll do it.
Okay.
But we, just from asking a few questions, we really do try to make that process as simple as possible, because it's not easy to navigate that process on your own, especially if you're a parent trying to navigate that process for your kid. It's not easy. So we try to make it as easy as possible just from asking a few questions. And from those few questions, we can determine, all right, these are options, these are not. So let's present these as options. Whatever that person feels most comfortable with is what we're going to try to get them connected with.
Cool. Another question for you guys. So do you guys remember the first person that you helped as Bare Knuckle Recovery?
Not in particular, no. I mean...
Yeah, I'm not kidding when I tell you we get a ton of messages every day.
Well, is there one person that stands out to each of you individually where you feel like you really got the opportunity to make an impact on somebody?
I mean, I would say Teresa, the first person that came to us that we're still friends with to this day.
Yeah, Teresa's definitely one of them. But we've been at, numerous events in the community where people have come up to us and said, hey, I reached out to you guys on your page. You got me connected with this treatment center. And, now they're at this recovery event in, whether it was Fort Wayne. I know one happened in Auburn, one happened when we were in South Bend. I think it's happened in Indy before. So that's really cool to know that, we are actually helping people through that page, which was the whole goal in the first place.
And we get a lot of people that come up to us that maybe aren't people in like active addiction, but people who know someone or just interested in the topic. Like we actually get a lot of law enforcement that's like, oh, hey, I've actually followed you guys on your page.
Get a lot of law
partly because of our relationship with Sergeant Gerardo, Fort Wayne Police Department Vice Narcotics. But, you know, I think a lot of people they're just hungry for information. They want to educate themselves. I think it's hard to find somebody in America today that hasn't been touched personally at some level by addiction or mental health in their family. You know, somebody that they can think of off the top of their head that they love very much, who's either lost their life or is still struggling very badly.
Yeah.
I do think it's awesome that was like what really launched you guys, is you guys provided information on a topic that was affecting so many people that no one else, they either had the knowledge and they weren't willing to share it, or they just didn't have the knowledge of it. So that's awesome. What year was that? Was it like 2000, 2001, you think? When you guys made that first post, that informational video?
Yeah, it was in January of 2021.
2001. They would have been in like...
sorry, my bad.
I think I was like in third grade when 9/11 happened.
9/11 was happening.
8 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the
I got you, though.
Gotcha.
It's all right.
I was confused. I'm like,
one of the other things that I would also like to point out is we do get a lot of messages on that page from people that say, well, I don't have any money, you can't help me. First, like, we don't charge any, like, if someone reaches out to us on that page, they're not paying us anything, regardless of, you know, if we connect them with whatever resources, we don't charge them for that. But a lot of people think that just because they don't have any money, they don't have any resources, that there's not any options out there for them. That's also not true. Again, it's not an easy thing to navigate. It's not easy to find those places, but we are aware of them, so we can still get people connected regardless of their financial situation, their health insurance situation. There's always options out there for people.
I would say one of the things that I did not expect when I took this job and when we started this journey in this field, but also with Bareknuckle, was the amount of, for lack of a better term, carnage there would be when fentanyl hit the scene full force. Like, for reference, in 2016, there were 68 overdose deaths in Allen County. And then in 2017, there was 127. So they doubled in 1 year, you know? And then you look back at, I think it was in 2019, we had 144 overdose deaths, 2020, 145, 2021, 173, and then 2022, 153.
So it's still climbing.
Well, it's gone down slightly.
Okay.
Well, that reminds me, too, when you had Mark on your show.
Yeah.
Was it Passion Fatigue?
Compassion fatigue.
Compassion fatigue.
Yes.
So not only was fentanyl huge, but like the first responders were being affected too. And people don't think of it like that, but
yeah,
that's just a whole nother, that's just insane. Yeah.
The amount of carnage that they're exposed to on a daily basis anyway, with car accidents, you know, shootings, stabbings, whatever, domestic violence, whatever it is, right? Whether it's paramedics, firefighters, police officers, it doesn't matter. Like, they all are involved in that, right? And even the people, the dispatchers that have to hear people screaming and being murdered on the phone or whatever's going on, right? Just the human suffering that you see up close. But the fuel that was poured on the fire by the you know, the fentanyl crisis, you know, you had the opioid epidemic, and then you have now the fentanyl crisis, which, you know, now over 100,000 Americans are dying every year from fentanyl overdoses, you know, which is an insane number to think about, right? You know, the amount of death that we have experienced and been around in the last 3 years, really 2021 is when, or 2020. I mean, I honestly believe, and I don't mean this like in any like kind of weird conspiracy way, but I think 145 was undercounted in 2020. I think that based on what we see in person, the amount of people we've buried, whether it be friends of ours who didn't get sober, or whether it be clients we've worked with, and it's actually become this thing that I used to hate it, because people reach out to me all the time when someone passes away, and they're like, "Did you hear about so and so?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't. I didn't even know so and so." But I'm just the person that everybody brings this stuff to now, not just me exclusively, but I'm one of the people that everybody reaches out to because they know I'm heavily connected with it. And I looked at it as a burden for a long time, but now I look at it as a privilege to be somebody that people trust to come to and to say, like, this happened and I'm hurting, and I can be there for them, you know, and I can encourage them, and I can just, if it was just sitting with them, you know, like you've gotten to know Mark Scheidt.
I was just getting ready to say, dude, I used to be so annoyed that he would do that. And then I think about it, I'm like, I'm happy that he trusted me to comfort those families, but how cool would it have been if I could have gotten to that family before this happened,
right? And
let that veteran know it's okay. Like, it's okay to not be okay. But instead, I'm meeting him at the funeral. Other families trying to figure out billing and And I'm just like, it's just, if I could just met the veteran, maybe I could have done something. I used to take a lot of responsibility for these vets I've never met. And I'm just like, and when we had the last hike before I stepped down as president, we had 2 Marines in like 10 days take their own lives here. And one of them had attended our hike many times. And I felt like that was my fault.
It's like, what are we doing? Like, why?
That was a really hard spot for me.
We're doing our event, and we still got guys losing the battle. Like, clearly we're doing something wrong. Yeah. That's how it felt. It
does feel that way. But, you know, like I've looked at it as, you know, I had to learn very early on because burnout's real and so is compassion fatigue. You can't save everybody. I mean, you can try, but you're not going to save everybody. One of the most striking things to me that I just never considered was that people think that after the person dies, whether it's suicide, whether it's overdose, that the story's over and they're just gone. And then, but they forget that the family's left behind.
Yep.
You know, so one of our focuses has shifted to be loving these families that have now this giant hole that's never going to be filled. And a lot of it is trying to work with the parents of the person that have passed. Like, I don't have children, so I can't imagine what it's like to bury a child, but I have just seen it devastate. I mean, it blows families to pieces. Yeah. The parents get divorced. The kids end up with all kinds of guilt. I mean, the grandkids don't get to see, you know, their you know, other family members now because there's disputes. People start blaming each other. And I'm not judging them because I've never been through it. I have no idea what that grief is like. And I'm sure that it can turn into a need to blame somebody very quickly. But if we can get to those families and, you know, we'd love to get to them beforehand when the person passes, but unfortunately it's happening so rapidly we can't. But at least if we can try to wrap our arms around them after the fact. And that's what I've been working on with Mark Scheidt, who's the owner of Fairhaven Funeral Home, is we've actually been working on this group of people who have lost their children and loved ones to fentanyl, who are now there and ready to wrap their arms around those people who come in, who join a club that they didn't ask to be a part of, right? But, you know, they're there to say that, hey, like, you know, it's not going to get better. Because that's one thing they'd also stop telling me, because people would say, it's going to get better.
I don't think so.
They told me it gets worse.
With, it's like it just happened yesterday.
Yeah.
They're just broken, and it breaks my heart.
Well, I've actually heard people say that the more time goes on, the worse it hurts, because you know they're gone from the minute they're gone, but it sets in more and more as time goes on. And you're like, wow, this is reality without my loved one, without a piece of my heart, you know? But there's people that have gone through it and they've taken, just like what we've done, just like what you guys, and you've taken their pain and turned it into a purpose. And we want to champion those people and then bring other people in who are hurting to that circle and say, hey, we're going to go forward together. It's okay for you to live. It's okay for you to go forward. Yeah. Not forget. No, we're not saying forget, but it's okay to live and to love, right? Yep. And you don't, like, I don't know if you guys ever seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life. It's one of my favorite.
One of the best movies.
Christmas movies of all time. It's an old black and white film. If you've never seen it, please watch it. I watch it every year. It's really great about purpose and your impact on the world. But there's this part of the beginning, this man named George Bailey, who is, I won't spoil it for you guys, but anyway, it starts with him on a bridge and he's praying. And everybody that knows him's praying, God, please help him, please help him. And it shows, you know, these stars and they're talking and they flicker as they talk, and it's God and Joseph. And they call, and he says, send for Clarence. Clarence is an angel, and the angel Clarence comes, and they say, Clarence, there's a man, he's going to be his guardian angel. He says, there's a man on earth that needs your help. And he says, what's wrong with him? Is he hurt? Is he sick? And he says, no, worse. He's discouraged. Yep. And that had a huge impact on me after I got sober. I mean, obviously I'd seen it before I got sober, but having worked with these families and people who struggle, like, you know, physical pain goes away, but emotional, mental pain, discouragement, I've seen it kill people slowly from the inside out. Yeah. And if we can defeat discouragement by loving other people and wrapping our arms around them, I mean, even if we just save one, if all we ever do with FW22 is save one person, it's all worth it.
It is.
Same thing with Bareknuckle.
It is.
You know,
I'm excited. Like I said, I know I gave you that analogy about I think it's in Waynedale. When you walk in, you got Taco Bell to the left and Long John Silver. That's us. I want to be partners with you guys. I want to do whatever we can to help support one another. And at the end of the day, though, whether it's addiction or not addiction, just struggling with mental health, my mission is always the same. It's okay to not be okay. And that's literally why I call this the war at home, because for veterans, whether you deploy or not deploy, that's a whole battle itself. But nobody talks about the battle at home, and that to me is probably harder than my time in Afghanistan. Because Afghanistan, I had a job to do, and that was pretty easy. Now I come home and it's like I have to be a father, I have to provide, it's hard. It's very hard. So if you can let the message of, like right here on our backdrop, Fort Wayne has your back, it's true. You're not alone. And if you are thinking that you're alone, just reach out to us. I can assure you, you're not alone and you're not different. We've all been there, done that, and we're all equals. But it's okay to not be okay. And I wish more people would like understand that, because they just don't want to ask for help. And that doesn't make you less of a man or a woman. It makes you stronger, in my opinion, to be transparent enough to say, hey, I need help. Like that takes some cojones. And so I'm like, that's literally my message at every event. It's okay to not be okay. That's more okay than being okay. No one's okay today. Nobody. We all struggle. Find those brothers and sisters that you can relate to. Let's struggle together, pick up the pieces, take over our own lives, and be in charge of our own lives, and not let outside factors like alcohol and addiction control who we are.
So one of our big things that we do is our Ruck March. That's what our organization was founded on. Like, in our experience, that brotherhood, that camaraderie, that's like the best thing for healing. Mm-hmm. Do you guys have like group events? Do you guys do or anything similar like that?
No, we haven't really yet. Yeah, well,
there you go.
Through like Fort Wayne Recovery in Allendale, they do a lot of alumni events. So people that go through that program, that's really cool to be a part of, to go to those meetings and see people that are doing well. And it does create like a sense of this community. And I always want people to know, like, they always say that the opposite of addiction is human connection. And I think that's true for depression. I think it's true for people that feel discouraged and alienated. Community is huge. If people feel isolated, like I said in the beginning of my story, I felt different than everybody. I felt like I didn't fit in. So when you don't feel like you fit in, you start reaching for other things that are unhealthy coping mechanisms. And I think that's true across whatever you're dealing with, right? And like what you said, if you could just know it's okay to not be okay and you can reach out to that person, then we can all come together and try to find a solution. Yeah. So I think that there probably will be some events in the future with Bareknuckle, and we're excited to partner with you guys too.
Absolutely.
I mean, we love your mission, and it's important, and it all runs together too. It's all connected.
One team, one fight.
Oh man, and not to like sound too like goofy, but I always say, like, with fentanyl and with all this stuff, like, it's not a red or blue issue, but it's a red, white, and blue issue. You know what I mean? So like, it doesn't know political parties.
She's giving me a freedom boner,
yeah,
dude.
I was gonna say
freedom boner, hardcore. I love that.
But no, I'm just saying, because like people like start to argue about the politics of it, and I'm like, who cares about that? Like, it's about people, and it's about saving people's lives, and I think everyone deserves to have a feeling of purpose. And I think that is the key, in my opinion, to recovery. It's been the key to recovery for us.
Yep, absolutely.
It's like, you were created for more than being slumped over on a couch drinking vodka and rotting yourself from the inside out. You're worth more. And that's why I push people. And people say, oh, we'll just leave him alone. He's doing the best he can. I don't believe that's the best you can do.
Yeah.
I believe you're worth more, and I believe you deserve more. I believe your family deserves more, and I believe the community deserves more. And like, to me, that's the most empowering thing, is like not worrying, like, oh, like, don't hurt their feelings. I don't care about your feelings. Like, I want you to be who you, in my belief system, God created you to be, which is the best version of yourself. And of course that looks different for everybody. But I can tell you right now that I'm damn sure that it's not you drinking yourself to death or shooting dope in your arm and stealing from the corner store. Like,
that's why they need more grassroots organizations, because we just tell it how it is.
Yep.
And we don't sugarcoat it. And that's what people need, is raw human connection.
Yep.
So I love it. I just wanted to thank you both for coming on. Obviously, you're going to see a lot more of Nate being a board member of ours, but more importantly, even though I tell Nate all the time, I think Tommy hates me, and you're like, no, that's just the way he looks. That's just the way he looks. I'm very, it's like my idols in life are like Brett Favre, David Beckham, Aaron Rodgers, but you guys are both some of my biggest idols. Yeah. Very, very humbled and proud of both of you. Call me a fanboy, I don't care, but I'm excited to do our work in the community alongside one another. I'm gonna have to get to the gym a little bit more so I can rock one of your Bareknuckle recovery shirts. But I just want people to know through your podcast and through ours that it's okay to not be okay. And just the fact that you guys own your addiction is so inspiring to me that it gives me a whole new like fire inside to help our vets, because I know for a fact mental health, there's all types of addictions happening in there, even if it isn't substance abuse. Correct, and I want to break through that. I don't want to meet their families the first time because Mark introduced me to them. I want to get to them before. So listen to the podcast, reach out to them at any time. Obviously, you can reach out to us anytime, but I'm very humbled that we're on episode 1, and I just cannot wait to see where we are this time next year and all we've done together. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having us.
We're definitely excited too, and very impressed and proud with everything that you guys are doing. And if I hated you, trust me, I would not be here right now.
Yeah, Tommy would tell you, man.
Well, it was just the look he had. I'm like, this guy hates me.
No,
for sure.
no.
Tommy looked like a sack of potatoes in a green polo. I'm like, I'm like, this guy hates me. But I knew for a fact when we got the green light to have the podcast, I knew who I wanted episode 1, and it was 2 of my biggest inspirations in the community. So Tyler and I are both pumped to have you on board.
We're pumped 100%. To be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you tune in next episode, it'll be an interview between the 2 founders, so you'll get to know Jared and I a little bit better. So we'll see you next week.